Let's start using the filter. Live and direct, you're tuned into the Bro Diallo Show, broadcasting straight out of the sanctuary hypocrisy that is the city of Chicago, state of Illinois. Today is July 11th in the year of your Lord, 2018. Okay, we're coming up into, this Trump presidency phenomenon. If I could give anything to white people, to the white masses, as Dick Gregory would say, our white brothers and sisters, I would give them, I would share, or if they could not, you ain't got to give white folks nothing. Let me not even, because I don't want to go down. I don't want to be designated to the coon train. So let me rephrase that. You ain't got to give white folks nothing, because if it's something they want, they're going to take it. And if they can't successfully take it, they will blow it up. And again, white folks, don't get mad at me. If you don't like your history, if you don't like being reminded of your status in the world, then change it. I'm just laying it out. But anyway, if white people could appropriate anything from black people, instead of on fleek, instead of the dab, instead of calling their houses cribs, instead of hip-hop, jazz, R&B, gospel, rock and roll, if y'all could appropriate anything from us to your own benefit, instead of our land, labor, and resources, I think white people, the one thing y'all haven't taken from us, the one thing y'all haven't appropriated, mimicked from us, is our capacity for collective shame. And that's probably the first thing you should have took from us. You should have colonized. You should have appropriated. You should have mimicked. Was black folks' capacity for collective shame and embarrassment. Because we got too much of it, I think. I think we have some to share. And I think if y'all tried to take it and we held on to it and wouldn't allow you to run with it, we'd be being selfish. Because black folks, I don't know if you got a black friend, if you got a black spouse, if some of your best friends are black. I don't know if you've heard or seen this, but if you've been hanging out with your black friend and they're comfortable enough around you, and your black subordinates don't count because of the code switching. I'm doing a little bit of dry snitching on my people, but it's okay. It's for it's for everybody's betterment. This needs to get out there to help white folks. So you don't ever believe that white people, black people who are your subordinates are your friends, because in their HBCUs, I'm never gonna mention HBCUs again. Lord have mercy. And let me tell y'all one thing about HBCUs, since this is the last time I'm ever going to mention them. Same thing with Obama. Same thing with all this black excellence nonsense. If black people, if you believe in something, if you love something, I'm not going to say set it free because that's nonsense. If you love something, stop acting like a fan of it, like a cult member. Be a constituent. Be a critical member of it. Because the black colleges, if black people were more aggressively critical of these HBCUs, these black politicians, the Democratic Party, Rainbow Push, Nation of Islam, Minister Louis Farrakhan, of all these things we look up to, we put on the pedestal, instead of being groupies, because groupies ain't good for nothing or nobody. All these artists walk around drugged out of their mind because they got all these people telling them how great they are. But if groupies were like, well, I'm going to be critical of your behavior, of how you carry yourself, of your artistry. I'm going to take a critical eye and I'm going to let it be known your shortcomings. I'm going to hold a mirror up to you. That would help the people. We wouldn't have so many dead artists and we wouldn't have so many dead institutions or dying, stagnant, obsolete institutions. So I said some things critical of HBCUs. And the HBCU tribe, the HBCU hive, HBCU alumni took offense. But what's ironic is many of the HBCU attendees, workers, and students that I know had little to say. But anyway, that's all I'm saying. Stop being fans of stuff. Stop being fanatics, cult members. How dare you criticize? How dare you talk bad? How dare, what have you done? All you do is talk. You do. Even if I'm talking, is the talk accurate or inaccurate? But you just get mad at me for saying stuff. That's fanatical behavior. HBCUs don't need no more fans. Y'all buy all these damn sweatshirts. That's not enough to fund an institution. And even if the institution is fully vested, it's operating in the black, if it ain't fulfilling its mandate, and you don't even know. I asked the HBCU defender, what is the mandate of your college? What is the mission statement? Now y'all know, but anyway, look it up. You might find some things you don't want to see. But a lot of times the things we don't want to see is what we should be looking for. Anyway, back to helping white folks. Because black folks obviously don't want my help. So I'm taking my services elsewhere, white folks. Let me help y'all. First of all, if you're a white person and you have black people that in any way are dependent on you financially or vulnerable to you financially, which is most white black people, they're not your friend. They can't be your friend. Now, like I said, at these HBCUs, they have this thing called code switching. They don't think your jokes are funny. They don't think your hair is cute and pretty. They don't think the clothes you wear are cute. They don't think your dances are clever. None of that. They just they walking down the clock from check to check. So white folks don't trust them. And yeah, I'm telling on you black people, because if the white people are like, yeah, Mustafa, I thought we were cool, but I listened to the Diallo Show and he told me you don't really think my jokes are funny. Because then send all them skilled, educated, hardworking, on time, showing up black people back to the hood, back to the black community, back to the movement. Y'all go on and send them back to us. We could use some functional black people on our side. Quit scooping up all our best and brightest and sending them to Harvard and Yale, putting them on your payroll. Come work for us. And I ain't saying come work for free. When you work for our people, you work for misery. That's our currency. They make you miserable. But anyway, white folks, what y'all should have stole from us was the capacity for collective shame. But if you have real black friends, you will have heard your black friend at one point or another, when they thought you weren't listening or paying attention, lament about how all black people are made to look a certain way or to feel a certain way by the actions or inactions of a black individual. Or how all black people are made to feel pride by the certain actions or inactions of an individual. So black people got a collective boost in our dignity, a collective boost in our self-esteem, a collective boost in our optimism when Obama ascended to the White House and he had a dark-skinned, non-ambiguously black wife and two little black daughters, and they all conducted themselves with such dignity. They all dressed appropriately. They all spoke the Queen's English, spoke standard English. We're going to overlook the fact, Michelle had her tendencies. When she was shucking and jiving with the NBA All-Stars, when LeBron James came to the White House and she tried to dunk and she had some, but she never went. She went up to the line, but she never crossed the line of black dignity. And we as a people are collectively like, yes. But then there had this old website, Hot Ghetto Mess, And they have this thing like, we must do better. Like, black people who think they're doing the best like to say we must do better and pretend like they with us, but when they not really with us, because when they say we must do better, they say everybody but me must do better. So we have that concept of we. If a black person's doing good, then we're doing good. I want everybody black to win, even if they winning at exploiting us. If they're winning at capitalism that's exploiting us, we still want black people to succeed. That's how much our collective psyche works. It's perverted, but it is what it is. I've tried to break it. I just had to get on board with it. I've tried to go against it. You know, and every black person has sat on the floor at their grandma's house, their auntie's house, sat in front of the TV. That's the way TV used to work. The children would sit on the floor and the adults would sit on the couch behind the TV looking at the back of our heads, and we better not move or make too much noise. And heard live at 10, double homicide, shooting and stabbing over a piece of fried chicken and a neck bone. And the black adults would say, oh, I hope that ain't a black person. Oh, I hope they ain't black. Shooting, oh, I hope they ain't black. Stabbing, oh, I hope they ain't black. Kidnapping, oh, I hope they ain't black. Corruption charge, oh, I hope they ain't black. Revolutionary uprising, oh, I know they ain't black. And we have that, and so we had that drilled into the back of our heads when we were little kids watching the news. Because they would try to give these little boosters for the news. They give you a little tidbit of news, and then that news at 10, details at 8. And black people were like, oh, I hope that mess, I hope that wasn't no brother getting into that kind of mess. Gonna make us, say it with me now, make us all look bad. So that capacity for collective triumph and collective loss and collective win has been drilled into black folks. Because we knew that a white man on his way to work who had an unpleasant altercation with a black man, whether it was a homeless black man, a black man going another direction, a black man he doesn't know, just a black person, will go to work and take it out on all the black people. We know that a black politician who got bullied in his undergrad years can go to Congress, can go to the White House or go to the Supreme Court and write legislation to do in all black folks. At least that's what we think. We know we have a severe resource deficit and we have a severe power deficit, so we're vulnerable to white people's individualized opinion of us collectively. So we have the false notion that we could collectively or individually influence the individual or collective attitudes of white people towards us to get them to act differently or less aggressively or less toxically towards us. It's a messed up thing, but it is a thing. I didn't invent it. But that's the one thing that black people have practiced, have understood since slavery. If Jabbo Jones didn't reach his cotton quota, if Jabbo Jones came out the slave shack with extra chitlin grease dripping down his face after drinking some grain whiskey and staggering out to the plantation, instead of walking out in his slave rags with dignity to work hard, all black folks would be embarrassed. Now, we have suffered under a regime of collective punishment. I do have some theories about how we came to develop this collective issue, and I don't find it as much. Caribbeans, black people from the Caribbean, also have it, stronger than us. You know, let a Jamaican, you know, not properly, or a Ghanaian not properly eat a mango. Lord, Bumbaclad Ross, you make a soul, you bring a soul down. You know, West Indian got it worse than us. So there's the so-called, I don't like Afro Latinos, because until I start hearing, you know, Sino Latinos, because there's a lot of Asians in Latin America, and Euro Latino, which is redundant, but if you got to say Afro-Latino, then... But anyway, the black brothers and sisters from the Latin American countries, the African south of the border, they got it too. I don't see it as much as in Africans. You know, you get a Nigerian doing some dirt, and the other Nigerians might be like, what's wrong with him? I don't see it as much. I don't say it doesn't exist. You know, I don't see it as much. Like Africans will share in each other's collective triumph, but they ain't not gonna carry your weight if you messing up. But anyway, Africans knew that we were always under a regime of collective punishment. So if a black person rapes a white woman and they can't find him, or more often, if a white woman lies about being assaulted or being looked at, whistled at, sassed by a black person, white people didn't really care which black person. There's a boxer, a famous boxer named Hurricane Carter, who was falsely convicted of murder, served decades in jail, and was eventually exonerated. And when he was initially arrested, this cop, this racist cop who was jealous of his fame and his talent, came up to him and said, you know, there has been a shooting in this area, and we're investigating the shootings, and we're trying to find the suspect. And Hurricane Carter looked at this white racist cop, and he said, any nigga will do. Because he understood the system he was under. It's like it doesn't matter whether the guilty person is found. As long as we get a nigga, it don't matter. Any nigga, a nigga is a nigga. That's the way white folks operate. So it was true. If a black person went out and did something, or did nothing, if a black person did nothing, but a black person was accused of doing something, then they would come burn the whole town, lynch, mutilate, murder. So it was, like if you sent your son off to school or off to work, and instead of 2018 is 1918, and he stumbled into the wrong neighborhood, said the wrong words, then your whole house could be burned down, and your neighbor's house could be burned down, and the neighbor on the other side's husband could be dragged out of the house, throat slit, burned alive, who knows? So we all look bad. You know, it ain't just about making us all look bad. You could get us all killed. And you could make us all look bad, evolve from you could get us all killed. You better check your behavior. And if you don't behave for your own well-being, behave for our own well-being. So anyway, that's something we've developed. And it has hindered us in certain ways, but in certain other ways, you'll never find an idiotic black person. There'll never be a black Trump rise to prominence. Not saying we ain't got no shysters and con men, but there's a certain ground level if you're going to represent black folks. Even Al Sharpton and T.D. Jakes, there's a certain floor that we don't go beneath. Because you say whatever you want, because I say it. There's a lot of black leaders that I can't carry water with. I ain't got no love for. But there will never be a popular, and even many of these people I mentioned, like Al Sharpton, they're not even our leaders. They're leaders that white people will put any black person that white person we are willing to put on CNN or MSNBC, or any white black person that the Democratic Leadership Council, the DLC, is automatically quote unquote a black leader, but we don't really pick them. But the true organic black leaders, there's a certain floor. There'll never be a prominent national black leader with 3 wives, several mistresses, 3 baby mamas, you know, long-term and intimate association with a known pedophile. So if white people could appropriate some of our capacity for collective shame, and look at Donald Trump, look at the Republican congressional leadership, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. I mean, that's all I can say. When I look at the white leaders, I'm like, ugh. I mean, y'all take Sharpton. Y'all take Farrakhan, man. I'm willing to give y'all both our capacity for collective shame and some of because y'all making our corrupt leaders look like golden child. I mean, Obama was horrible. It was horrible for us. Anyway, he worked for y'all. Y'all might as well adopt him. He's earned it. He's earned a place in your heart. But I'd like to believe that if Obama, I know for a fact if Obama got up and did 1/1000th of the nonsense that Trump was doing, black people. Because we don't care about Obama bombing. We don't care about Obama advancing a neoliberal, omnicidal, capitalist agenda. But long as he does it with a level of dignity and poise, come now, man. Come now, man. We can somehow work around it. And so, while you're doing the dab, while you're out here getting jiggy with it, white folks, just try. Every time Trump comes on the TV and you're watching MSNBC with your white children present, or you're listening to NPR as you drive to get casserole plates, when you're consuming your media, white folks, especially in the presence of your children, and Trump comes on, or a story about Trump comes on, just say out loud, he's making us all look bad. He's bringing the race down. And say, we got to do better as a people. So then we'll have a generation of white people who will come up with the capacity for collective shame. But they will also have what is called collective dignity. And then white people can somehow feel good about being white without that being juxtaposed with degrading, dehumanizing, and aggressing towards others. You can just be content to be white and leave it at that. Give it a try. Humanize, Urugu. Listen to me. I'm serious. Just try it. Say it with me. Let's rehearse. Trump's on the TV. And the Russian PPT is back in the news. The porn star he paid for sex and had to spank him with a magazine with the image of himself. Or Trump makes another quote about how sexy his daughter is. Say it out loud. He's making us all look bad. Not Americans. He's not making America look bad because every brother ain't a brother. Every American ain't American. Black folks, we don't claim none of that. And even the fraction of a fraction, the statistical anomaly of black folks who voted for Trump, we don't claim them. Y'all own them outright. We didn't sign them over to y'all. Lock, stock, and barrel. Signed, sealed, delivered. So don't even say, well, I know a black Trumper. No, you don't. You know a pathological hollow shell of a black person that y'all have indoctrinated and overly indoctrinated. Y'all cooked that one for too long in your indoctrination oven. So you can't put them black Trump voters on the black community because don't nobody claim them. They don't have a seat at the picnic or the cookout. So say to yourself, he's making us look bad. He's making white folks look bad. He's bringing the white race down. And we, the white race, we must do better. Say it in front of your kids. And then I'm telling you, it's going to work. You're going to see a transformation. When your children grow up and get their ill-gotten inheritance and go off to their unearned elite education, and then they get their undue opportunity in the world, there will be a higher level of humanity. Trust me. Because Trump is bringing y'all down like Bobby did Whitney. And I'm not lamenting this. I wanted to prop y'all up long enough for the Black Revolution to bring down the man, bring down the system. But we ain't going to get a chance to rise up and bring down the system because Trump. We got the NATO summit coming up in a few days. The North American Treaty Organization. And I'm anti-NATO. Let me go on record. I'm anti-NATO. And if I had the power of a God, one thing I would do in my anti-NATO agenda was put Trump in the White House. Trump is antagonizing all of the NATO members and the other affiliated nations. Germany, Great Britain, France, even Canada. He's bumping heads. And he's playing footsies with the NATO enemies. Trump has an affinity for dictators and strongmen, the Filipino Duterte, psychopaths. Literally, imagine having a serial killer and serial rapist as a president. Oh, Americans, we don't have to imagine because most Americans are most presidents have been serial killers. And if you defined a serial killer as someone who kills systematically, and if you define murder as either taking your hands and strangling someone or ordering someone else to do it, because I watched some of those murder porn shows, and there was a man who had a wife and a son with a severe disability, and the husband had to pay her an enormous amount of support, not just spousal support, but child support, because the son had a disease, a debilitating congenital disease. So he hired a hitman. And the man was in a different, he thought he was so slick. He went to a whole different part of the country. He wasn't even in the country, and said, go kill my family and I will pay you. And the man went and killed the sick child in his bed while he's on his IV and oxygen tank, killed the sick child. Horrible, horrendous crime, and killed the wife. Then he left, disposed of the evidence, and went to a payphone. There were payphones back then. This is not a recent crime. And called the guy and said, the deal is done. The guy was like, okay, I'll get you the rest of your money. Anyway, they did their forensics investigation. They found the hitman. The hitman ratted out the husband. The hitman got jail time. The husband, the ex-husband, got the death penalty, even though he didn't get any blood on his hands. So if you can be accused of murder by simply paying and directing someone to commit murder, then every president that I know of has been a serial killer. Because they pay the U.S. military and give the U.S. military its directions. But maybe I'm just being extremist. But I truly believe that. If I was a president, I would close every foreign military base. I would recall all nuclear subs, aircraft carriers. I'd bring all that back home. And I say we will have as many military, and if the U.S. is to have a foreign military base on foreign soil, then we have to allow that nation to have a military base on U.S. soil. There isn't one military base, foreign military base on U.S. soil. But there are literally thousands of U.S. military bases all over in other countries. I get, because I'm just not a mass murderer. I just can't. That just don't sit. You know, that just disaligns my chakras. That really lowers my vibranium level. You know, I just can't. I can't. So I don't think I would qualify as a president, because I think one of the prerequisites of being a president is being willing to engage in mass murder. Now, if someone attacked the U.S., then I'd probably be the one doing it, because I'm as anti-American as they come, according to some folks. But anyway, let's not get into that. NATO. Trump is going to NATO, and he's saying that the NATO allies should pay more. First of all, NATO should be disbanded. I think that NATO shouldn't exist. NATO was formed to stop the spread of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, well, not even the Soviet Union, the U.S. couldn't care about the spread of, so the U.S. doesn't care about imperialism as long as you don't cross, you don't interfere. But they didn't want communism to spread. And they didn't want communism to spread is because they thought there was this fear of what they called a good example. They felt that communism, they would go around the world telling everyone communism is not a viable system, communism doesn't work. But then at the same time they're going around the world saying that communism doesn't work, they're literally spending trillions of dollars to undermine it. Now, if something doesn't work, why would I work so hard to undermine it? Obviously, it does work. So what they would have been if they're not and say, look, communism isn't going to work, because if you mess around with communism, look at Vietnam, look at the Congo, look at Cuba. And yes, even though Cuba has sustained the attack, Cuba has been relentlessly attacked. Bio warfare, chemical warfare, subversion, terrorism. The U.S. has had an unrelenting, ongoing campaign of terror against the Cuban government, plus the illegal, unconstitutional blockade of the country. So socialism doesn't work. Why wouldn't they just leave Cuba alone to fall on its own? So anyway, NATO was set up to stop the spread of communism, to stop the spread of sovereignty, to stop foreign nations from independently choosing their own path economically. NATO was set up to subvert the sovereignty of the formerly colonized world. That's the real mandate. They say, oh, we are here to protect democracy. We all know that's poppycock. And so NATO, in a response to the formation of NATO, which was basically a treaty saying that if any of the NATO countries or NATO affiliated countries is attacked by the USSR, the Soviet Republic, then we will defend each other. Also, we will take any steps available to us to stop any other nation from coming under the influence of the Soviet Union. So they said in their own charter that we exist to stop the spread of the Soviet Union and communism. The Soviet Union dissolved in 93, 91, around about that time. Between 89 and 93, the Soviet Union was eroding and fell. And they went through all these reforms, glasnost. They brought down the Berlin Wall. They made all these wonderful gestures for peace. They signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Act. They did all these wonderful things. The Soviet Union, not only was it no longer a threat, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. And NATO, an organization that was set up to defy this organization, continued and expanded. It tore up its charter, it ignored its mandate, and became a whole new something else. When the Warsaw Pact was dissolved, when the Soviet Union collapsed, when the Russian nation and all the former bloc nations says, hey, we're no longer going to be held in a republic or under one political and military flag. We're all going to be independent, sovereign nation, balkanize ourselves, fractionalize and atomize ourselves. George W. Bush, H.W. Bush should have been like, no more. But instead, the U.S. increased its funding to NATO and then began to expand NATO, even though Bill Clinton told Boris Yeltsin, who was the drunkard, Boris Yeltsin, look him up if you don't know. He is the Trump of Russia. He's the calm before the storm. He is the poison pill that destroyed the Russian Empire or the Soviet Empire, the Soviet Union. Trump is doing to the United States what Boris Yeltsin, negotiating all these one-sided, lopsided, stupid deals, not getting anything, knows nothing. Boris Yeltsin was a bloated drunk. But at least you could say Yeltsin was a drunkard. He didn't know what the hell or what the hell he was half the time. But he kind of has that Trump energy, that Trump, Kanye, dragon energy. That's Boris Yeltsin. Look that dude up. He's hysterical. So Trump, Boris Yeltsin went and negotiated the best deals like Trump. And Bill Clinton said, yo, I'm not going to expand NATO. We're not going to we're going to lock NATO in. We're not going to dissolve NATO, which is what Boris Yeltsin should have negotiated. He said, we're going to lock NATO in. We're just going to, to do some housekeeping. But you go ahead, give all Poland and Crimea, give all these nations their sovereignty, Ukraine, give them all their sovereignty, open up your papers, denounce communism, take down all the monuments of Lenin, take down all the monuments of Stalin, abandon your culture, abandon your history, abandon your revolution, and I promise you, you will have an ally in the United States. So they did it. And then Boris Yeltsin said, whoa, you're doing everything you told me you wouldn't do. You're expanding NATO. You're bringing former Soviet bloc nations into NATO. NATO is in North Africa, in the Middle East. You're putting more missiles on in Western Europe aimed at us. You got this missile defense system and all this. What the hell, man? And Bill Clinton literally said to this dude, "Did you get anything I told you in writing?" But he was like, "Comrade, comrade this and comrade." Nope, comrade my ass. Did you get it in writing? And so that's when Russia had a brief flirtation with free market capitalism. And you had the emergence of what was called the Russian oligarchs. And a lot of the Russian underworld, Russian mafia figures, and a lot of the Russian intelligence KGB figures became the oligarchs, the new capitalists. And while the common Russianer who under the Soviet Union got free education, got free housing, got free health care, but I'm not going to go and talk about, because all we know is Russians had to stand in line for bread, and they never had blue jeans. We don't know anything about the magnificent accomplishments of the Soviet Union, even under totalitarian Stalin had made some, communism works. That's all I'm going to say, especially for white folks. Socialism works for Africans, but communism, we'll talk about that another day. I did talk about dialectical and historical materialism and Marxism. It is a viable system. In fact, anything white people have been pounding in your head is wrong for your whole life, you best believe it's more likely than not right. But anyway, long story short, Russia found out that capitalism doesn't work, and they found out that the U.S. is a stinking, lying, dirty dog. And so they came in and locked up a bunch of their oligarchs. And then Vladimir Putin said, "Listen, we're going to lock up dozens of oligarchs, and we're going to take all your wealth. We're going to nationalize your industries. And the rest of you oligarchs, if you don't want to be sitting in the Siberian prison, better fall in line." So Russia went from a free market, wild, wild west free market capitalism in the early 90s back to a totalitarian dictatorship. But it's the United States orchestrated all of it. And the white men get blamed for all of that. And the U.S. gets blamed for all of that. But it's still beyond that. Even though Russia came under a dictatorship, it no longer had any more, quote unquote, ambitions to reestablish the Soviet bloc. It did not want the Iron Curtain to descend. It no longer tried to bring the former bloc nations under its sphere of influence. It didn't reestablish the Warsaw Pact. So even under Vladimir, they said, "Yo, there's no reason for NATO to exist." And NATO kept expanding. NATO's in Haiti. What? What NATO? What? NATO's in North Africa. NATO's in Libya. NATO's in the Palestine territories. Zionist occupied Palestine. That's what we need to start calling it. ZOP. Because they call the United States the Zionist, the ZOG, the Zionist occupied government, because they falsely believe that there's some Jewish cabal of Jewish elders and the Jews run everything in the United States. That's just no evidence to that besides people's paranoia. But there is evidence. And that's another thing, where a lot of these white right-wingers and the stupid black people that listen to Alex Jones and read Behold a Pale Horse and The Hidden Hand and all this, the reptilian David Icke, the biggest black people who get into that nonsense, conspiratorial poppycock, listen to, Dr. Leonard G. Horowitz, listen to these white racists who claim they're against the New World Order and the Illuminati and the Bilderberg. Now, there are some facts embedded in that. But these half-truths coming from these people, but they get into a lot of false threats. Like this thing I don't understand with Pizzagate. And there was some pizza parlor where they were trafficking children out of this pizza parlor. And all these goofy-ass white dudes were making all these goofy-ass statements and videos and investigations. None of it was supported about Pizzagate. And white right-wingers said the Clintons are sneaking babies out of Washington, D.C. in pizza boxes to molest them or some nonsense. And even some silly white dude went in and busted in the room. And the pizza parlor eventually was like, listen, can y'all bring some news cameras down here and walk all through and show me where a dungeon is in the basement of my pizza? And they were like, oh, it's just a storage unit. There's no evidence of nothing. You can believe what you want, but there's no evidence. And people would send me these links, and I would be like, where's the evidence? That's a horrible, horrendous story. And I don't put nothing past you, Rugel. So let's see what they got going on. And people would rather chase this ghost of a story when there are actually children being trafficked by the government right in front of your face. And where's the redneck, hillbilly, patriotic American to go and kick down the door at the ICE headquarters? You go kick in the door at a pizza parlor and shoot off a lock in a storage unit in a pizza parlor because of some alleged child trafficking. But ICE, the federal government, the executive, Donald J. Trump, Stephen Miller is his chief advisor, are trafficking in children. And Donald Trump has a long history of associating with known child traffickers and pedophiles, like Jeffrey Epstein, his billionaire homie, who would have orgies in his mansions, who was locked up, who is a registered sex offender. And of course, he got a light sentence. And then he moved to the Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands is a hub for sex trafficking and child sex trafficking. They say Virgin Islands is the 4 S's: sun, surf, shores, and sex. And Trump is a known associate, and even Trump is recorded in the media. Trump is recorded in an interview when they asked him about his good friend Epstein. He joked about his pedophilia, his proclivity to sniff in behind underage girls. He thought it was a joke. Where are the white right-wingers? Where is Alex Jones on this? And we've got child sacrifice, the Bohemian Grove, child sacrifice. You know? But when you have documented obvious, that it ain't a right-wing conspiracy, it ain't a left-wing conspiracy, it's a documented policy. There is videotape evidence, audio evidence, written evidence, and confessions from the perpetrators of the crime. Yes, we are taking children, and we don't know where those children are. And yes, the president, who is ordered the taking of the children, is a known associate with pedophile. He himself has made remarks of a sexual nature towards underage children, like when he told that 10-year-old girl, in another 10 years, I'm going to be in your panties. Something like that. When he is pictured standing arm in arm with Jeffrey Epstein, when he has stated on record in interviews, Jeffrey Epstein is a good friend of mine, and he said Jeffrey Epstein is as sexual as I am. He's as sexually liberated as I am, but he likes him a little younger than I do. Ha, ha, ha. And then when Trump ran for president and Jeffrey Epstein came up and got locked up for trafficking in young girls, raping underage girls, setting up liaison with young girls, Trump was like, oh, I don't know Epstein. And then you can go online, Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, pictures of them smiling in each other's faces. And Trump is known to go to Epstein's lavish parties. And they said that Epstein, when the FBI did the investigation, they found that whenever he would throw his lavish parties, he would hire these brokers whose job is it to go out, and they were mostly women. Talk about toxic masculinity. Many of the pedophiles that I know of had female allies, female assistants, and female coverage. And there are female pedophiles, but the way masculinity is set up, the way the patriarchy is set up, if a young boy is assaulted by an adult woman, especially if she's an attractive adult woman, that's high fives all around. That's, again, another discussion. But all I'm saying is, all these right-wingers, all these Alex Jones InfoWar nonsense, and all these black nationalists, black conservatives who listen and follow along with this right-wing nonsense, where y'all at now? So it ain't about saving the babies. It's about trying to shame and assault the Democrats and shame and assault liberalism, the ideology and practices and policies of liberalism. It ain't got nothing to do with babies. Babies are tools, are football. Whether it's the fetus of the unborn fetuses and end abortion, or Pizzagate nonsense. There's a bunch of unaccounted for babies that have been kidnapped by a government. And we also know that around 50%, depending on what region, it hovers around 50% of children are removed from the home and put into the foster care system due to sexual abuse and sexual exploitation. But when the children enter the foster care systems and become wards of the state, that number goes up to 97%. Again, give and take a few percentage points depending on the region, whether you're dealing with the New York City or Kansas City, Missouri foster care system. So the U.S. Child Protective Services and Division of Family Services is literally another conduit to give pedophiles access to defenseless children. And again, you can go to CDC, you can go to HUD or Division of Family Health Service. They'll tell you this. They don't hide this. Now you looking under rocks for reptilian overlords, or you searching basements of pizza dives for exploited children, when there's documented cases of children being trafficked and exploited by the government, not by the Illuminati, by the secret government, by the underground government, by the legitimate government. And they do their own internal evaluations and give you their own internal documents like, yeah, when children come into this system, even if the child is taken out of the home for neglect, if the child is taken out of the home for abandonment, if the child is taken out of the home for physical abuse, if the child is taken out of the home because of a custody dispute, that child, if they have not been molested, by the time they are rescued by Division of Family Service, they will be molested. Either in the group home, the child detention center, or by the person that we elect to put the child into the home with. You go from 50%, which is already obscenely high, to a 90+% sexual assault and sexual exploitation rate. Where are all these? But it's easier to follow this Pizzagate nonsense because y'all don't really care about the children. Y'all care about advancing your ideology. And because your ideology is toxic, because your ideology is not viable, because your ideology is just plain stupid, you need to come up with nonsense like rescuing people from reptilian overlords instead of rescuing people from capitalism, from environmental destruction, and rescuing people from documented scientific issues and problems. You want to save fetuses. You want to step over homeless children to save unborn fetuses. When you don't give a damn about unborn fetuses. Because if you gave a damn about unborn fetuses, there are many women who are more than willing to have babies. And they don't have the resources. So how do you ignore the women who want to have children and even shame them? You whore, you hussy, you welfare queen. And then there are other women who want to have babies, but because of the environmental pollutions, because of corporations like DuPont, because of corporations like GE and Apple Corp, no longer with us, but the Coke industries, these industries put all these pollutants into the atmosphere, and so black women's breast tissue, their fatty tissue, is full of toxins that they can't carry a healthy baby to term. That their breast milk is toxic. Their environment, the air, the water is toxic. So you ignore the women who's like, listen, I want to have my baby. Oh, you go to hell. It's all on you. But a woman says, I don't want to have a child. I want an abortion. Oh, we're about to get all up in your grill. Y'all running games. The right wing, conservatism, is the biggest freaking lie. It's disgusting. I don't talk about conservatism as much as I talk about liberalism because I thought for a moment our people, the black community, understood that. I felt like that was a given. Y'all know damn well conservatives are full of feces. But it's a little harder for us to peep the liberal hustle. Because the liberal hustle is like free healthcare, free education, free expression. They got a lot of good rhetoric, even though they do a lot of the same dirt. And a bomb dropped on your head by a liberal will desecrate your family as quickly as a bomb dropped on your head by a hypocritical right-wing conservative. So I felt obligated. It's like, listen, I got to go in on these liberals. I got to go in on these Democrats. I got to go in on the Obama administration and its many crimes. Because they're a little slicker. They're a little bit more articulate. I just said they're a little bit more polished. Obama's not going to talk about how he's going to wait 10 years for a 10-year-old girl to become the age of consent so he could have his way with it. Obama wouldn't say that, not on a microphone. You know. So I figured I got to work harder. But now I see a lot of black people falling into this proto-fascism. I see a lot of black people like, I like me some Trump. I'll roll with me some Trump. He kicking the immigrants out. Black people, know your history. Our financial woes are not a byproduct of illegal immigration. I mean, if you want to deal with black folks' financial deficits, I just think you're barking up the wrong tree, and we ain't got resources to waste. We need radical analysis, by golly. But let's move on. There's so much to cover here. California's on fire, and Japan is underwater. And there's some Japanese teacher who made a video, 3 things he wants to say about black people. Japan, for a long time, has had the notion that America's falling. America is struggling to compete on the financial stage because there's too many black people in this country. And Japan is a notoriously homogeneous society. They're very aggressive about keeping Japan yellow. Like, keep America white. They're like, keep Japan yellow. Very racist. They're the white folks of Asia. Like, black men are the white people of black people. White men of black people. Japanese are the white people of Asia. But anyway, while half his country is underwater, hundreds dead, flooding, and mass destruction, and while the other half of his country is still being saturated in nuclear fallout, this Japanese man, instead of helping with the flooding or helping with the cleanup of the Fukushima reactor meltdown, 2 major meltdowns, he decided to make a video telling black folks what we should do in the United States. Man, and what really bothers me about that is not that some idiotic Japanese dude who looked like he's suffering from radioactive poisoning, if you see his video, is that black people are responding to it. Black people are up in arms and hooping and hollering. Let's learn to ignore it. I mean, I wish I could ignore it, but I can't ignore it because people are sending it to me like, what you want from me, man? This dude, tell him he needs to go get some iodine capsules and a radioactive hazard suit and not worry about black folks. However we doing. You couldn't pay me to go to Japan or eat any seafood coming out of the Pacific Ocean for that much more. Because Fukushima, Obama didn't fix it. And that's that. So Cali is burning. Climate change is a climate change is a Chinese hoax. So half the world is underwater, the other half is on fire. But we move on. One thing I want to tell y'all about climate change is climate change emerges. There are going to be a lot of idiots who try to exploit these catastrophes with their stupid-ass religious delusions and their concepts of apocalypse and supernatural retribution. So I say stay up on the science, geology of climate change, global warming. Stay up on the science. Michio Kaku and many other... I'm going to start sharing more links because I really hate that these scumbag-ass religious people, some of the people who drive the destruction of the ecosystem because of this toxic idea that man has dominion over the earth, that man is not a part of the earth's ecosystem, but man is above and separate from the earth's ecosystem and have the right to dictate and control and use that for our own desires without any repercussions the world's ecosystem. And this sick notion that there's an expiration date on existence. God is going to return. And all this afterlife nonsense. So I'm going to say and emphasize, black folks, stay up on the science of climate change and global warming. Stay up on the science of ocean acidification. And when you look at the fracking industry and all these mini volcanoes, and instead of addressing capitalism, instead of addressing ecocide, you got people saying, oh, that's the seventh seal has been broken and Jesus is on his way back. That's some real that's some punk ass stuff, I'm telling you. And people who do that and the people who are doing that are doing a grand disservice, not just to the black community, but to all of humanity. And there's a lot of shucksters and hustlers out there talking that this is the apocalypse, as if the world hasn't had volcanoes since the earth was formed. As if the world hasn't had flooding. As if there isn't scientific supports. There is no evidence that there's a supernatural influence on any of these geological or environmental crises. But there's absolute tons of evidence that there is a scientific and logical reason. Don't let these hustlers run. Don't let them hustle you think Trump or the right wing or the conservatives give a damn about babies or fetuses in the sex trade. Because if there is a pedophile who can make money for them or give them money, they're going to support it. Let's get to the topic. I wanted to talk about, the Supreme Court. People scared. Boy, they got you pooping your pants behind this SCOTUS appointment. And this Kavanaugh lunatic and executive immunity and the threat to the abortion rights. It's too much to get into, but I guess I'll be here Friday if I don't get to it today. But I don't. Sunday, I really want to talk. This is what I really want to get into. The title of today's show. Maybe I should just lead in with it. I don't know. I got to get myself together. Maybe I should take some class in broadcast journalism. Learn to do this thing right. Violence is life. Pacification and oppression. There was a anti-violence march organized by a coalition. The Push, Rainbow Push Coalition under Jesse Jackson and Father Flager, who is head of the St. Sabina Catholic Church, which is a white man who is over an all-black Catholic congregation. Black Catholics are freaking weirdos. Yeah, I said it. You don't want me to call you a weirdo? Stop being a freaking weirdo. Black Catholics. There's a Mormon church in the heart of Hyde Park. And my wife and I were doing our weekly Sunday stroll. Just walking and talking and walking. We used to call it coffee walk, but then y'all made us boycott Starbucks. So it's no longer a coffee walk. It's just a plain old boring walk. Thanks, black people. Took away our Starbucks. Nah, let me that. To hell with Starbucks. I ain't. But anyway, we were doing our coffee walk and we stumbled upon a Mormon church. But what's worse than finding a Mormon church is finding a Mormon church with a bunch of black folks piling out of the damn church or piling into the damn church. Black people was weird. Now I can see, it's bad as it is. It's like y'all try to act like, well, being a Republican is as bad as being a Democrat. Hillary is the same, just like Donald Trump. No, it's not. I'm sorry. I know how we want to appear to be so enlightened, but come on. There's more nuance than that. Now, I understand. Black Muslims, Black Baptists, Black AME, Methodists. But, how you get all the way over to Mormonism and Jehovah's Witness and Catholicism? Damn. That's like you indoctrinated yourself, because the Baptists, the Shakers, and the Quakers, the Protestant religions are the ones who enslaved us. So they had hundreds of years. So if you're a black Christian, you can put it off on your indoctrination. And if you're a black Muslim, you can put it off on saying, well, damn, I thought I had an anti-establishment alternative. And we didn't know what was going on in North Africa. We didn't know what was going on in the Middle East. We didn't know that. We were enslaved. We were on the plantation. We weren't on the campuses. We weren't given research grants. So black folks coming off the plantation and being beat over their head with Jesus. And then we were like, well, you know, some of us was like, I don't like this Jesus stuff. They beating us over the head with it. I want an alternative. And then there's Islam was sitting around. I understand. I don't agree with it. But I understand. So, all I'm saying is, how you go Catholic though? Catholics were persecuted in this country. How you get a black Catholic? Black Mormons, black Jehovah's Witnesses. I guess, like I said, ain't nothing white folks, ain't no garbage white folks and poop out that black, at least some faction of black people not gonna gobble up. Shame, shame, shame. But if there's work to be done, the struggle continues. Anyway, Father Flaker, a white man. And here's another thing. Let me go on and speak the truth, speak my truth. I graduated and attended a Catholic high school, a private Catholic school, Bishop Hogan High School. Now, me and my sister, we lived in the projects, but we had an aunt of means. We had a family member of means, and this family member said, I want to help reach back and help my less fortunate family members. And that's how black families are organized. You know, like Clarence Thomas, he's Supreme Court Justice. He got a sister that live in the projects on the food stamps that he tries to legislate out of existence. That's just how black families got it. In most black families, you have everything from homeless to wealthy multi-millionaires in the same damn family. That's what happens when you don't have multi-generational wealth. You just got sporadic pockets of riches. But anyway, I had gotten into some trouble. I was going to Southeast, the neighborhood school, Southeast Junior High School. And some of my friends had dropped out. Some of my friends started thugging. And, you know, I didn't want to drop out because I kind of like school, actually. And not just the academic part. I like the interactions. I like to see the different characters and different personalities all interacting. I didn't mind going to school. And the work wasn't too difficult for me. But this thugging stuff, I'm like, man, that's like a hard job that don't really pay really well. You know, I just didn't like getting punched in the face or stomped on the neck. It just wasn't my thing. I didn't like having that done to me. I didn't like doing that to people. And that was a big part of thugging, you know, banging. And this was before. This is like 89, before the money and before it got really organized. It was just different crews. But anyway, I'm just like, I can't do this thugging thing. But anyway, I was still torn because that's where my homies were all divvying up. You know, I'm going to be a smoker or a dealer. I'm going to be a runner or a gunner. And, you know, and I was kind of in limbo. And everybody like, so what you going to do? Anyway, I had an aunt came in. It's like, why don't you just take your little skinny behind the school for somebody pop your ass? And I'm like, hey, you ain't got to tell me twice. I was looking for an alternative. Anyway, long story short, I ended up at a private Catholic school. And I learned some things about Catholicism. One thing I learned was there was such thing as black Catholics. And I had to take 4 years of theology. And I learned about the Douay Bible, which is different than the King James version of the Bible or the New American Edition. I just learned some things. But one thing I know about Catholics is, unlike the Baptists, is that, or the most Protestant sects, ain't no minister for life. Like you get a black minister, that old pack of hot dog neck, thick neck, jive talking slick shack, now later gay, Cadillac driving fool, he gonna die in that pulpit. And when he dies in that pulpit, more likely than not, one of his most jankiest, slickest, thievingest, conniving son gonna take over that seat. Churches are heirlooms, or family heirlooms. So when Chidi Jakes finally heart seizes up and he fall over and tumble down to the podium, one of his offspring gonna step up and say, the Lord told me to take over this multi-million-dollar operation. Put it on my heart. That's how it go. That's just how it be. I had an uncle, he had a church, he stayed in that pulpit to the day he died. That's how the Baptists do. That's just how we do. So, but Catholics, number one, you cannot say, the Lord has called me in Catholicism. In baptism, I could sit here in this chair right now and say, oh, the Lord has just put it on my heart. He wants me to preach his word. And I walk out this door, get my tax exempt status. I ain't got to go to seminary. I ain't got to get nothing. That's all I need. And I'm a preacher. could go preach the word. But in Catholicism, it's a whole process. Frocking, I said frocking, FCC, and you know, go to seminary. You can't just say the Lord put it on your heart. The Pope don't give a damn. The cardinals, the bishops, they don't. You can't just say the Lord wants me to be a bishop. It's a whole hierarchical process, step-by-step official process. And you don't get to say, the Lord wants me to preach here. The Catholic hierarchy says, okay, we will ordain you. You are a parish priest or whatever, and you will be here, you will be there. And one thing they do is the average tenure of a father or of a priest is about 5 years, 5 to 7 years, 10 years max, before they move you to somewhere else. They move them around a lot. Flager's been at this St. Sabina for like 30 years. This is unheard of. Find me another priest over a parish that's been there as long as Flager. But when it comes to black folks, I guess the rules don't apply. But he's built a little fiefdom there, and ain't no way he's going to be like, I built up this little fiefdom. I ain't going to let you take my little empire away from me. So Flager, anyway. And he's just been all over the place. He's fought everything from sexy billboards to gun violence. So the March Against Anti-Gun Violence was held, and they went on an interstate and blocked an interstate that's just a few blocks from my house. My wife's parents lives in the south suburbs, so I always take that same route that they went onto the highway and blocked the road. Sunday afternoon. What a protest. What a way to stick it to the man. On a Sunday afternoon, when there's the least amount of commercial traffic, when most of the traffic there is people coming and going from shopping, grocery shopping, hitting up the mall, or visiting their relatives on the south side or the south suburbs, leisure traffic, they're going to go block and obstruct the highway. Now, if they really want to send a message, they block it Monday morning, 6 a.m., and it would cost the city of Chicago billions of dollars in revenues. That's when you hit it. And you don't go to City Hall and go to Mayor Rahm and say, can I have some permits? Oh, this is the plan. This is the projected numbers. Here's our mailing list of all of our members who are going to participate in the protest. We're going to put you up front. And even Flager was on record as saying, you know, I will delay the march if it's too much of an inconvenience. I can reschedule the march for justice. Justice can wait. Justice can be denied. That's what didn't King say justice delayed is justice denied? Flager says justice delayed is just sit your ass and wait until I tell you to get up, boy. That's what justice, quote, Father Flager. So they went on Sunday, which is a freaking embarrassment. How is it a protest? I want to make it convenient for my oppressor. You know, it's like if you're planning a slave revolt and you say, well, we're about 2 weeks from bringing in the harvest. So let's plan the slave revolt to after we bring in the harvest and the cotton gins have been set up and it's been processed and it's been shipped off to market. Then when the fields have been cleared and prepped for the next season, that's when we're going to rise up. When it's most convenient for my oppressor, for me to rise up. That don't make no goddamn sense. You have a pre-planned march to block a highway in a major and you know 94 feeds into the loop. Did they go block the loop? And you could block the loop with a thimble. You put a thimble on the middle of the interstate and the whole thing shuts down. You don't even need 1,000 people. You give me 2 winos and a shopping cart and I can shut down the entire Chicago loop. All I need is y'all give me a good lawyer and some bail money. I can shut down the loop without no plan. I'll shut it down. The loop is one of the most congested traffic ways. And did they go to the loop? And the loop feeds into downtown, north into O'Hare Airport, Midway Airport, the whole economic hub of the city of Chicago. It's a loop. And they are blocked, and then 94 feeds right into that. Where were they? Way out on what? They were out past Hyde Park. They were out past Hyde Park. Now, I didn't go to the march. I can't even tell you exactly where them coons was. Let me not call it. A lot of people I know went to that thing. And I'm not saying you're not a coon, but you're coon adjacent. You're a coon sympathizer. I mean, but you can call me. You know me. Y'all know me. When next time, holler at me if you want to talk about it. Just talk. But you're not even down at the loop on a Sunday. Even if you go and block the loop on a Sunday, you know this is the 24 hours, 7 days a week economic cycle here. So you could have done more damage. You could have sent a serious message. Because a lot of the businessmen, the business class, the business commuters trying to get to O'Hare, trying to get to Midway to catch their chartered flights back to go and steal somebody's resources, wherever they got to go. And they, a lot of times they do it, Sunday is a big travel time for businessmen, so they set up for you could have shut down O'Hare, you could have shut down the Midway Airport, you could have shut down the Chicago Loop. Hell, you could have went and shut down the Taste of Chicago. But you shut down a highway that as far as possible as you could get to still be within the city limits, but outside of the area where you can cause any type of disruption. And now that I don't even think marching is valid. But like Claude Anderson said, y'all not even doing wrong right. You're going to do the wrong thing in the worst possible way. What the hell is going on? And what kind of you black folks? Dr. Clark said 30 years ago, marching is nothing but a waste of shoe leather. We still marching for the life of me. To me, the only march I will participate in is to move things from one place to the next. Militaries don't march for just ceremonies. Militaries say, wait, we got to get a large number of troops from point A to point B, and the best way to get it and get all the materials and everything and to keep everything logistically lined up, we're just going to march there. We're going to march in lockstep, keep everybody in a group so we can control this group. But a march is going from one place to the next for a purpose. I don't understand. This was a punk-ass protest. That was a punk-ass protest. You punked out to the mayor, and you had the chief of police leading the goddamn march with his arm around her. You know, when you had a white Catholic, when you talk, how dare any kind of Catholic tell anybody about violence? Goddamn, tell the Vatican to give the tons of gold, the artifacts, the scrolls that you stole from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East during the Crusades. Give reparations to the billions of people who have been under. Where's your formal reparations? Because the good ship Jesus of Lubeck, the first official slave ship, was blessed by the Pope. The Pope set out a papal bill saying that all Christian nations have a right, an edict from God, to subject all savage people you can enslave any non-Christian as long as you did one thing. He didn't say you can enslave a non-Christian if you don't rape them. You can enslave a non-Christian if you don't steal their children. You can enslave a non-Christian if you don't take them from their land. You can enslave a non-Christian if you provide them with adequate food. He said you can enslave a non-Christian as long as at the time that they're under your enslavement, you convert them to Christianity. That's your cost. So I can enslave any non-Christian, and my obligation to that non-Christian is to convert them to Christianity. So I'm like, pick cotton all day and all night, every day, and on Sundays for a few hours, I'm going to tell you to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and I'm vindicated. I will die and go to Catholic heaven. That was the deal that the Catholic Church set up, and they ain't giving us reparations. Vatican City is one of the richest territories in the face of the earth. The Pope is one of the richest men in the world. And it's all ill-gotten stolen gains. And you see all those grand cathedrals all over the world. You go to some countries and the only building that's functional is the Catholic Church. And the Catholics will go and say, hey, we will feed you. We will give you water and shelter, but you have to accept Jesus. And you have to allow us to sexually exploit your children. If I'm lying, I'm flying. And I'm firmly on the ground. But anyway, we so goddamn forgiving. Oh, he's one of the good ones. But anyway, I don't know how a Catholic, anybody, because if Flager was really for peace and justice, the first thing he would do is snatch off his collar and renounce his affiliation to the Catholic Church. And he's always in trouble with the Catholic Church anyway, because he he plays footsies with people like Al Sharpton, and Al Sharpton is pro-choice. I don't like this pro-choice, anti-choice, pro-abortion, anti-abortion. So they say you shouldn't be supporting reproductive rights, contraception, and abortion. And he says, well, I do. He should have been snatched out of that church in the 1990s. 1980s, really. I don't know why he's there. I don't know what that hustle is about. But I'm new to Chicago. I'm still trying to understand a lot of things about Chicago. Y'all, I mean, I'm a transplant. My wife was born and raised here, but she's keeping Chicago secrets from me. I don't know what code y'all have. I don't ever claim to be a Chicagoan. I'm a transport. I'm a guest in y'all home, whatever. But not even my wife will spill the beans like, what the hell is wrong with Chicago? And she's like, mind your business. And boil me some tea water. That's all she ever says. When I find out what's up with Chicago, I'm going to tell the rest of the world. But anyway, Reverend Jackson, Father Pfleger, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who endorsed and fully supported the march to block a highway on a Sunday afternoon, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, to send a message to the city. And this fascist Zionist mayor was like, oh, I applaud you Negroes. That's exactly how you do it. When I extract resources, I shut down 50 plus public schools. I shut down mental health centers. I deprive your community of resources. I use your tax dollars, TIP funds, to build and invest in the Gold Coast and other communities. I help Obama come and further gentrify and pimp the community, giving him public lands for his $1 billion presidential public community center. When Obama doesn't have enough respect for the black community, if he's going to put up a presidential library as an academic hub, it's supposed to have his archives. He's like, well, no, I'm going to put a rap studio for you niggas. You niggas don't need books. You niggas don't need my archives. How dare you research and study my legacy? Who are you to question me? You just need to be happy while I do this jig and sing this Al Green song. Because Obama, we weren't Obama's constituents. We were Obama's fans. We were Obama fanatics, not Obama electorate. But this guy, by the time Rahm Emanuel was like, oh, I applaud, with his missing finger, oh, I applaud you, you coloreds. And good job, Father Pfleger, for corralling and herding these cattle in a way that is least disruptive, least damaging. And then the racist ass, fascist ass mayor, governor Rauner, and Rahm Emanuel have this fake ass Twitter fight. And Rauner's like, well, Rahm Emanuel, get control of your niggas. They're blocking the streets. Get control of your colors. You don't see the blacks here in southern Chicago and rural Chicago. We keep our folks, we don't have this uppity behavior. And Rahm was like, well, I fully endorse the march. That right there, march is illegitimate. Cancel the march. Rahm endorsed the march. If I was a Jew in Nazi Germany and I'm like, well, we're going to do this action against the Nazi regime. And then he's like, well, Hitler gives his full support. Cancel it. Cut it. You need to cut it. Go that way. Something. What the hell, people? But let's say, okay, yeah, you ain't with marching. I don't support marching. I think it's a punk ass move to have the march on a Sunday afternoon. And then when you have the march on a Sunday afternoon, you still herd black folks all the way to the south side of Chicago, away from the hub, the economic hub of the city, to not cause as minimal to zero disruption to the functioning of the machine that is killing us. You don't want to be impolite. Even Dr. King, everybody thinks Dr. King would say, hey, we're going to march. Number one, we ain't getting permission to march. Number two, we ain't telling you when we're going to march. Number three, we ain't telling you. Well, that's not true about Dr. King. Dr. King did the same thing. I wish I could say it. Dr. King got permission, and sometimes the local or federal government say, Dr. King, this is disruptive. Don't do this. And Dr. King say, yeah. But he evolved Flager been doing this mess for 30 years. I don't think there's any. And Reverend Jesse Jackson been doing it, been hustling and hurting black folks like cattle before Flager got around to it. So I don't see any chance of them changing. But let's say, what were the demands? Why did they have all these black folks out on this highway on a Sunday afternoon when they could have been eating chitlins and praising Jesus in their comfortable air-conditioned churches? Why did he have all these coons and coons-adjacent black folks that was follow a white man to freedom? Why were they out there? Here were their list of demands. And I'm not making this up. They wanted more resources for communities affected by gun violence. Didn't specify what resources. They wanted national gun law reform. Didn't specify what specific reforms. Jobs. They wanted jobs. Didn't specify what particular jobs. They wanted improved schools. Didn't really say what the hell was wrong with it, so you didn't diagnose the problem, so I don't know how you're going to implement a treatment or a solution. And they wanted economic development. Now, out of the 5 demands, 1, 2, 3 of them were redundant. More resources, jobs, economic development. Hell, I could have consolidated that into one statement. Not even a full sentence, a fragment. I could have consolidated. And then national gun laws. Then go have if you want some national reforms, you don't go to the city. You got to take that to D.C. National policy is made in D.C., not in City Hall or not even in Springfield, the state capital of Illinois. Y'all are even marching in the wrong places for the wrong stuff. So of the 5 demands, 1 of them is not relevant because they're asking they want constitutional amendments or reforms or national mandated reforms that can't, even if Rahm Emanuel, the entire state legislature, entire city council, and the scumbag racist governor, who I hope is kicked out of office this November. Yeah, I'm saying, vote Rauner out. So of the 5 demands, 1 of them is just null and void because you're asking national policy from a local government. That's not how the government works. One of your demands should have been basic civics. And of 3 other demands, non-specific demands, are all redundant. And then the 4th demand, improve schools. Yeah, whatever. The schools ain't open. You can't improve it. And the schools are being shut down. And then the Democrats, Rahm Emanuel, Barack Hussein Obama, have all been pro-charter school, pro so-called, air quote, school choice. They have adopted the right-wing Republican policy on public education. So the very people you fighting with are the ones you should be fighting against. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It was a march against violence, and there wasn't even any violence-specific stuff besides national gun law. So the one thing that you have to delete from the list was the one thing close that even approaches the damn thing. This was some dumb waste of time. And if somebody came on my doorstep knocking on my door talking about we want you to come march and stand between Father Flager and Messy Jesse, Rainbow Push, and Saint Sabina Catholic Church, and also you got to make room for Johnny, the police superintendent, a black man, a token black man who's over the Chicago Police Department, who's been a cop for 30 years, and his first official statement as the top cop, as the head of the Chicago Police Department, to say, I've been a cop for 30 years, and I myself personally ain't seen no evidence of racism or mistreatment of colored folks. And black people fought to get him his job. If it wasn't for the black protest movement, if it wasn't for black people fighting in the streets, dude wouldn't be there. And he ain't seen no racism. And he been there 30 years. I could be in the police department for 3 minutes and point out as many incidents of racism and abuse as you want to see. But he suggests black folks is crazy. Black folks is blind. And you know one good thing? Since he's been in office, there hasn't been any aggressive anti-police protest in the city of Chicago. Did I say shitty? The shitty inner city of Chicago. Shitty of Chicago. Shitty of Chicago. Catch me if you can, FCC. I'm the gingerbread man of radio. But anyway, it hurts me It offends me. It gives me great despair to see the level of resources wasted on stagnant, backwards, stupid. And let me tell you something. They don't even approach it where they're saying, well, we're going to put out a statement. They don't respect black people. They don't respect our capacity, our cognitive abilities. They don't respect our ability to understand what is happening to us and why it is happening to us. One of the major reasons, number one, the state provokes violence. The state provokes violence. The state is dependent on violence. If violence ended tomorrow, person-to-person violence ended tomorrow, the U.S. economy would go into crisis mode. The U.S. government would go into crisis mode. Every year, they do analytics. They anticipate how many people will go to jail, how many people will be murdered, how many crimes will be committed in the government, how many white-collar crime, blue-collar crime, violent crime, non-violent crime. They predict that out for the next 10 years. And they take actions. If the crime rates drop too low, they take actions to increase the crime rate. If the violence and homicide rates drops, they do take actions to increase it and intensify it. How do I know? If you go back to 1992, after the so-called Rodney King riots, after the LA rebellion and uprising, there was a established nationwide gang truce. And the Crips and the Bloods, the Rolling 60s, the Knickers and G's, Pueblo, Grape Street, this is what I see, quoting Ice-T. All the gangs said, we're going to have a truce. And we're going to police ourselves internally. So if you got a member, if somebody has a complaint, if I'm Pyru and I got a beef with the Grapevine, then what I'm going to do is go to the Grapevine leadership and say, yo, one of your guys, one of your soldiers ain't adhering to the truce. And so you police your boy. So instead of me and my crew going to clip this dude, I'm going to go and we're going to do this diplomatically. And the truce was sustaining. And violence levels, gang activity tanked. It bottomed out. And instead of hustling on the street corner, they were doing some Panther type business. Food programs, protesting, policing and patrolling their own communities. And this was nationwide. And the LAPD did everything in its power to undermine. They identified the leaders and the strongest people who were in the gang troops, and they snatched them up. They identified who are the people most likely to violate the truth, and they boosted them. They made sure they were given a free range of operations. There were minor things that the LAPD would do, like they would go and impound a rival gang member. They would take the Crips car and then drive it to a Blood neighborhood and smash out the windows and prank, Crip killer on the car and smash the windows and rob the car and set the car on fire and leave it there in the Blood neighborhood so that the one gang leader will get up and find it. You know how California dudes are about their cars. If you don't know, don't even find out. It's a mess. They crazy about their cars over there, West Coast Customs. They did everything in their power to subvert the gang truth. And they knew when they did the same thing here in the Chicago gangs, that you decapitate the leadership and you create a power vacuum and you cause the gangs to splinter and fraction, and then there's just increased violence. Peace is a threat to the status quo. It's something we have to understand. Violence is a constant in this system. Since they hit Plymouth Rock, since Plymouth Rock fell on us, as Malcolm said, there hasn't been a day without a murder. There hasn't been a full 6 months out of 200 years. They said the United States has had what? Less than a decade of peace out of 200 years, and that's adding up all years. There hasn't been a full year with full peace. So violence is a constant in this system. So why do you have everybody walk around talking about peace? Oh, we want peace. We love peace. We need peace. And when you go walk into any room, and 99% of the people in that room will claim they down with peace. So since everybody from Trump to Bro Diallo, we all say we love peace, how come we ain't got it? How does everybody want something and nobody got it? Because violence is a constant. You don't have capitalism without violence. You don't have the United States of America without violence. You don't have an economy without violence. You don't have social hierarchy without violence. If people are not afraid for their lives, they don't depend on leaders. They don't give up their sovereignty, their freedom, their dignity to anyone if they are secure in their person. You need a certain level of social tension and insecurity to maintain the so-called social contract. This whole system is sustained on violence. We love to talk about how America was built on slavery and genocide. We never talk about how America is sustained on slavery and genocide. Genocide and slavery has never been stopped. It's been modernized, reworked, and reformed, but never ended. How do you cultivate violence in a community? It's very easy. You cultivate desires in people, and then you deny them access to the very objects that you create desires for. So you create a $1 billion-trillion media apparatus. I floss so hard, I ball so hard, money, hoes, and clothes, all that nigga knows, all these diamonds and flossing and gold grills. True Religion, $300 jeans, $250 Jordan sneakers, gold chains, pinky rings, Rolex watches, and colorful swatches. I'm digging in boxes, and MFers can't stop it. You create this very materialistic desire in young people. You deny them formal education, the capacity for critical thought, and then you cut them off from what it takes to get those desires. To satisfy those desires. You cultivate desires in people, and then you deny them opportunity and access to satisfy those desires. That is a formula for violence. Violence is about identity. Violence is about unmet expectations. Violence is about internal contradictions. The U.S. government hires psychologists, social engineers to determine what they can do to provoke violence in the black community. Black people are not naturally violent. Black people are not inherently violent. White people have spent decades trying to advance this idea of genetic proclivity to violence. They tried to find the violence genes, the antisocial genes. They tried to discover many ways to justify why are blacks so violent. And black people, we hoop and holler every time, oh, that's racist, oh, please don't talk. But every time they come up with some formula for violence, they all of a sudden turn around and find like, wow, every one of the indicators and factors of violence, black people are always way low on the scale. And white people always are off the scale. We have to recalibrate in order to get white people, because white people are the most violent people. White people historically, socially, militarily, domestically, are the most violent group of people in the United States and abroad, at home and abroad. So they cultivate violence in the black community. They need to sustain levels of violence, because if black people stop killing each other, because one thing you have to know about property values mean nothing. They say possession is 9/10 of the law, and the number one path to wealth. The majority of wealthy people in the United States either got wealthy through real estate or sustained wealth through real estate. Trump is a real estate tycoon. Every wealthy person you know of has some type of real estate holdings. Even the guys that like to play tiddlywinks and like to gamble on the stock market knows a solid investment, property. And how do you increase property? Because property is stagnant. Land is land. They ain't making no new land, and they ain't taking away no new land. It's not like other markets where you can say, well, there's a glut in the market and then there's a recession. It's essentially stable. So how do I get wealth off of land when the land is the land is the land? By artificially depreciating values in some places will artificially elevate values in other places. Only in our minds. And black people like to talk about property values as if there's no such thing as property values. How do I know? When they value property, they're not valuing the land or even the infrastructure in the buildings. They're valuing the people. Harlem used to be one of the most affordable communities in New York. When I moved to New York in 1992, forever ago, When I moved to New York City in 1992, I had contemplated moving up to Harlem. The only reason I didn't move to Harlem because I'm like, I could save money. I have more money to run up in these clubs and sniff after these girls in these head wraps and long jean skirts and Chuck Taylors. I got more time to beatbox at Washington Square Park, try to get in a cipher even though I can't rap for nothing. Would have more time and money to run the streets, coming from little backwater Kansas City to the big city of New York. I'm like, if I moved to Harlem, I could get a more affordable little apartment and have more time to run the streets. You know, go to 40 Acres and a Mule, get my X cap and my African medallion. But I went ahead and stayed in Brooklyn because my campus, it was closer to my campus. I was literally like 2 subways a stop on the 2 line, 2 stops away from my school. So I could sleep later and I had more opportunity to actually graduate than if I lived in Harlem, coming way from uptown all the way down to central Brooklyn. So anyway, that's how it was back in the day. The property value was low in Harlem, relatively low. Why? Because black people occupied the space. Now that white people are occupying the space, property value skyrockets, 14,000%. And it used to be for a relatively cheap amount of money. When you get an apartment in Harlem, I'm not just talking about these little boxes. I'm talking about an apartment with a dining room, a foyer, whatever. I don't even know what a foyer was, but I had one in my apartment. You know, walk-in closets, all of that. Turn of the century. That's what gentrification is all about. Gentrification is not about improving the neighborhood. The gentrification is about white people occupying a space that was formerly, and their value goes up if white people are there. Value goes down if black people are there. They don't value real estate. So, violence in the black community, dysfunction in the black community, disruption of the black community is why you can have the Gold Coast. Why you can go to any major city, Oakland, New York City, Houston. I don't know about ATL. I've only been to ATL once, and every time there's a reason for me to go to ATL, I wiggle out of it. I hate Atlanta. I said it. Quote Wise Intelligent. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan. Now, I got 2 words for Atlanta: wasted and potential. But if you go to most major metropoles in the United States, you will find that affluent communities are often framed or just adjacent to murder, death, kill. Like you could be walking through Hyde Park looking at a William Lord White architecture. You can go to see high art, a book cooperative, all this beautiful, affluent, clean, pristine, get you a vegan organic meal and take in a show or an indie movie, and then stroll over or hop on your bike and go to this luxury gym workout space where they give you free clean towels. And you walk literally 5 blocks and you're in the most depraved murder, death, kill zone. And that's everywhere you go. And then the thuggers, the shooters, the killers, the hustlers, they don't cross that invisible line. I'm like, why are you down here or up on 47th Street and Vincennes robbing? Why are you down on 75th and King Drive robbing and hustling? You just go a few blocks and you got white people that don't got no street knowledge, don't even have guns to shoot back at you, and they got the most up-to-date iPhones, iPads, watches, rings and swatches, all the things that the rappers tell you you should get. You could go and gank these white kids. Not that I'm advocating for that. I am, but I'm not. I'm just saying, where's the logic? Because there's no logic to this. This is a constructed, manufactured, artificial reality. And whenever I'm down on 75th Street, whenever I'm up on 47th Street, whenever I'm in my own community and I'm looking at these people engaging in some nefarious activity, which is only a minor fraction of the people, but still, I'm like, why not just go a few blocks over? You cross King Drive, you cross Drexel, and right there you got a bunch of buster-ass marks, a bunch of easy marks. Because this is a game. There is an unwritten contract between the streets and the police. And that's why I tell you, these gangs, these thugs, these robbers, gangster killers are the biggest Uncle Toms. Gangsterism is cooning. It's coonism. And I hate that these so-called conscious black people out here talking about street organizations, street tribes, as if there's some revolutionary potential embedded in a gang. When gangs have been consistently counter-revolutionary, not even in the black community, but even when you look at the white community, in the white history. When you look at Marxist and socialist uprising, when you look at anarcho-syndicalist uprising, the goon squads, and the people coming with the billy clubs, the Italian mafia, the Irish mafia, the Jewish mafia, all these underworld figures have always cooperated with the elites. They've always worked on behalf of the elites against the interest of the commoners. And I'm not saying a gangster can't be a revolutionary, but you can't be it at the same time. You have to be a gangster or a revolutionary. You have to be in a gang or a liberationist organization. They don't meet up. And the same black people that tell you, oh yeah, black Democrats, yeah, these dumb black Democrats. And they know the Democrats aren't going to help us, but you think the folks are? Even though, many of the gangs in Chicago and around the country have gotten contracts from the federal government. For what? And we see them, the Black Guerrilla Family, Black Panther Party, Southern Christian Leadership, Student Nonviolent Coordinated Kitty, the MOVE organization, the list goes on and on, the OAU, Organization of Afro-American Unity, the UNIA, all these black formations that aren't even doing crime get blown up by the government. But these gangs that are daily and openly engaging in crime, nobody touch them. It's a hustle, come on. But anyway, they cultivate desires and deny access to satisfy those desires. There's other ways to create a violence or a potential for violence. But that's the main, easiest way. They literally saturate young black people with media telling them, go after this materialism. I don't give a F about nobody. It's all about me and mine, what I can get for myself. Do me, do you, player. F the world, don't ask me for ish. Everything you get, you got to work hard for it. And then they put up obstruction. They under-resource the schools. They under-resource the mental health. They under-resource the healthcare agencies. They under-resource the very homes. They under-resource the facilities such as services, everything from groceries to child care. You under-resource. You have people living in a state of supreme depravity. At the same time, you have the most intensive multimedia propaganda telling them material wealth is yours. Reach out and grab it by any means necessary. Boom. Because you have many nations where I once worked at the Arthur Ashe Institute on Urban Health. And one of the detriments to urban health was violence. Not just gun violence, knife stabbing. New York, again, that's when I moved to New York, I found dudes carrying around box cutters. Where I grew up, box cutters were not considered weapons. And I used to really think all the time, I go out to play ball or go out to the club and thinking, man, I don't want to get opened up by a box cutter. Man, just get dudes would carry knives. But anyway, all those forms of violence. But you'll find that poverty is not the number one indicator of violence. Because you have many poor nations that don't have the level of violence. And then also, I tell you this story. Never forget this a day in my life. I was going to D.A. Holmes Elementary School. And this is back in the time where children in school could walk to and from school. And I was walking home from school. And I was walking with, I don't know if I should say names. This is forever ago. But I know my man Terrence, Rip T was there, who's locked up, man. Sending you positive energy, I don't know. Sage. Rip, Sage, who else was there? I don't want to say people's names because some people still. But anyway, we were walking home from D.A. Holmes, and we were walking past a known. Back then, they didn't call them trap houses. We were simpler back then. We just say that's the dope house, that's the crack house. But it wasn't really an active crack house. It was kind of like an abandoned house that dudes would sometimes hustle out of, sometimes just squatting. It was just an abandoned property. But back then, in Kansas City on around Monroe, 75th Street. Wasn't that many abandoned properties actually. But anyway, these dudes come running out with guns. Like M1, Mossbergs. And they're aiming them at us like, bah, 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 like guns and robbers. Bah, 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 boom, 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 boom. And we're like, yo, wow, this is so cool. Where y'all get these guns? And they were like so proud. They wanted to show somebody. So they said, come in. So we go in there. And they literally have these ammo crates and these crates full of weapons. And like USAF spray painted and stencil on the side. U.S. Armed Forces. Like these dudes had military weapons, military ammo in the military crate, transportation crates with the military logo attached to it. And these aren't freaking high-level cartel members. These are literally little crusty-nosed neighborhood kids. And I'm like, yo, and they were like, yeah, isn't this cool? And everybody was like, isn't this wonderful? I mean, I lived in a neighborhood growing up. Holla at me, East Hills Village, 75th and Monroe, Village Boys, where you didn't have access to notebook paper and pencils for school. But me and my homies were walking the street with chrome-plated, wooden handle, 357 Magnum fully loaded. You had more access to military-grade weapon than you had access to the basic essentials of hygiene. It was easier to get bullets than it was to get deodorant. That is not by accident. Ain't nobody that damn stupid. And all the guns, the rappers, my Glock 9, my Desert Eagle, my Uzi, my Tech 9, all of those guns come from one place, Israel. Look up the manufacturing. And I used to think, why do all these black people, why don't they ever rap about Tauruses? Like my favorite revolver is my Taurus 38 revolver, 4-inch. It's a very practical gun. It's not a sexy gun. It's no gun that any rapper would ever floss in a video. And more likely than not, if a rapper's flossing this gun in a video, it's not a very effective weapon, except for the Kalashnikov. The AK-47 is a monster. But most of these other fancy weapons, these Rambo weapons, most of y'all don't know how to properly clean and maintain them. They get all gunked up with residue and soot from the gunpowder. Y'all don't keep them lubed up. They jam on you. But I got a very practical gun that is very easy to aim, enough stopping forces, a very practical self-defense and home protection weapon. But it's not sexy. I'm like, why are all these rappers pushing these Israeli weapons? And I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat. But let me tell you, bottom line, this anti-violence march. I want to say some more about this. I'm going to have to pick this up because I'm running out of time. But I'll pick this up in the first half of the show. Or the first segment of the show. I'm going to pick this up. Because I want to talk more about violence. We have to understand violence is not inherently bad. All humans and living things have a capacity for violence, or what we would define as violence, what I would call self-defense. We have to understand the difference between internal violence and external violence. We have to understand and properly utilize ascending violence, descending violence, and lateral violence. Violence is not the problem. And violence very well be central to the solution. So black people shouldn't try to stop violence, because that's pacification. Ending violence without being in a position of power is pacification. And a pacified population is set up for extermination. You don't want to be pacified. And that's what Flager, that's what Jesse Jackson, that's what all these anti-violence activists call for. They want pacification. It should have been a march against capitalism. It should have been a march against oppression. It should have been a march to de-arm the police. It should have been a march for redistribution of resources. It should have been a march for a progressive taxation system. It should have been a march for the establishment of a third progressive party. It should have been a march for socialism. If people are marching against guns, if people are marching against violence, that's like marching against cancer, but not ignoring the nuclear power plant that's causing the cancer. They're marching against symptoms. They want to keep us emotionally invested, and they want to shut down our capacity for critical thinking. They want to further indoctrinate us. They want to promote genocide. They want to promote menticide by having us march down an empty highway on a Sunday afternoon pretending like we're sending a message to those in power. And even if you still want to waste your time marching, if you ain't marching during rush hour, during the week, you ain't sending a message to nobody, except the only message you're sending is that we are pacified. Frantz Fanon said that violence for the oppressed people is a form of self-actualization. Violence for the oppressed makes you human. When the oppressed man strikes against his oppressor, he is manifesting and confirming his very humanity. So we need to stop following Flager and start to heed Fanon. Violence is a tool. Violence is a byproduct. Violence is a symptom. And marching against guns is like marching against hammers. If people are out here smashing each other in the head with hammers, we're going to have a march against hammers? The guns are not really the problem. And they might be a vital source of the solution, a vital component of the solution. And why are the people who are anti-violence? You know where the resources that you're calling for, economic development, jobs, and resources for the communities affected by violence? Why didn't you call for defunding the military? Why didn't you call for resection? They're building a multi-million-dollar police academy. Y'all playing games. And it's late in the day, people. It is late in the day. I'm not anti-violence. I'm anti-injustice. I'm anti-oppression. And one more thing about nonviolence. You can't have a one nonviolent. The only way to have nonviolence or to be anti-violence is all sides of a conflict agree to peace. So it's the police, the capitalists, the landlords. Hey, a march against landlords, a march against slumlords. There's so many things to march against. And little be known, I empathize with the lives that are lost. But violence has been in the U.S. is as low as it's been since 1970. Chicago violence is actually down and low. And like I said, if the media reported on chronic disease, if every time somebody had a stroke, every time somebody had a heart attack, every time somebody had an amputation from diabetes, the media flew in with a helicopter. We have another patient being brought into the ER, and they just are going to have multiple applications due to gangrenous diabetic gangrene. Oh, this is a terrible. People would be like, wow, the health of our community. They can get us charged up about any issue. Relevant issues, irrelevant issues. They can have us neglect solutions, and while we harp on problems, it's mass media manipulation. This march was a mind screw, but a mind F, blank blank K. It was mass manipulation, and it didn't communicate a damn thing to the people in power. Rahm didn't learn nothing from this march. Well, they did learn something. Rauner, the police chief, Eddie Johnson, Rauner, they learned that black people are still playing games, that they can still run game on us, they can still exploit our community, dump drugs and guns in our community, demonize and criminalize our children. They know they can still get it, and there will be no viable consequences or solutions coming out of the hood. That's what they turn. Oh, the niggas are still willing to march to nowhere. They still willing to get on this treadmill and walk to freedom. That's what they learned. And it tells me what that march communicated to me is I still got a lot of work to do. The struggle continues, and we will win without a doubt. You know, we just need radical analysis, revolutionary solutions, and if you want to have it, and we need, any revolution has always had progressive revolutionary media. So please support the Bro Diallo Show when and if and where you can. Go to DialloKenyatta.com, Patreon. You can support on the Patreon site. You can make a one-time donation to help sustain our show on the air, help to expand our reach. Please share the show. Please go subscribe to Diallo Kenyatta YouTube/Diallo Kenyatta. Subscribe and hit the notification button so you can get updated when the Bro Diallo Show is going live. Also, all the shows in their entirety you can find archived at DialloKenyatta.com. Support Q4 Radio, Q4.org, TuneIn app, iTunes Radio, and if you're in the city of Chicago, you can find us live on AM Radio 1680. Peace. And I'll see y'all Friday morning. We're going to be talking about slave to the algorithms and the new digital barons that are dictating the very reality we dwell in. Peace.